and I actually didn't create these myself. A secular author and psychiatrist, Dr. Lance Dodds, he critiqued these so-called myths of addiction in his book that's titled The Heart of Addiction. And on pages 91 through 102 are where you'll find these myths if you check out his book. His book is good in the sense of a secular book that talks about addiction. I mean, there's some good things in it that I agree with. Obviously, he doesn't hit it from a spiritual approach. He's debunking the spiritual approach in this. And I would agree with him in the sense that the spiritual approach that any God will do should be debunked. I mean, that doesn't work. There is one true God and only one God that will do for addiction. So that's our approach, that it is a spiritual problem. Dr. Dodds would say it's not, so we differ on that. That's why I can't endorse or recommend his book fully. But I do like some things in there, like this myths of addiction. So he has 10 myths that he lists in the book, and I'm going to go through all 10 of those with a special guest helping me for those 10. Now, let me just read the first myth that he talks about, and I don't want to get into depth. This is the introductory podcast for this series. So when my special guest joins me for myth 1 and 2, we'll dissect it. And then I'll have a different guest for myth 3, a guest for myths 4 and 5, a different guest for myths 6 and 7, and so forth. So these will be podcasts that I'll do with people, and we'll unpack these together. But here are the 10 myths just to introduce you to them. The first one is, you are addicted to things that are addictive. Again, that's from Dodds on pages 91 and 93. He talks about this. Myth 2, you have to hit bottom before you can get well. Pages 93 and 94 of Dodds' book. Myth number 3, if you have an addiction, you are self-destructive. Now, here's the thing I want to talk about right here. I've just introduced 3 myths. I agree with these myths, that these aren't things that are true. It might sound true at first, and you're probably thinking, man, especially that last one, if you have an addiction, you're self-destructive. Isn't that true? It's not true. And you'll have to listen to the podcast coming up about myth number 3 to hear why that's not true biblically. And we talk about it in that podcast, I think, very well. So you'll hear that. But myth 4 is you need to surrender. And Dodds would say that's a myth. So we'll talk about what it sounds good, doesn't it? I mean, as I'm reading these myths, I'm thinking people are going to be, well, yeah, you need to surrender. And we'll talk about that. Myth 5, you should count your days of sobriety. That's interesting. Myth 6, you should be treated by someone who also has an addiction. In other words, it takes an addict to help another addict, limiting anyone else from helping. Myth number 7, addiction is basically a problem of brain chemistry. Dodds says that's a myth. I agree. Myth number 8, people with addictions have an addictive personality. Myth number 9, people with addictions are impulsive. Myth number 10, denial is a failure to recognize reality. That people with addictions are choosing to control their lives with addictive pleasures, so they will not admit they're helpless when they recognize they are truly not helpless. And this is all from Dodds, page 100.